100 questions about jobs. I will be answering them. My esteemed colleague Tom will be asking me the questions. This is going to help you build your vocabulary for talking about jobs, about your work history for answering questions. Pay attention not only to the vocabulary, but to the sentence structure. And be sure that you're answering the questions yourself as you go along. Pause the video if you want to practice how you would put sentences together. So let me get my earbud and let's call up Tom.
How many jobs have you had?
I have had so many, it would take a very long time to try to count them and figure that out.
What's been your least favorite job?
My least favorite job was probably being a secretary.
Why didn't you like it?
I didn't like it because my only job was to do what other people told me to do, and I like to come up with things to do.
How'd you get to work for this job?
For this job, I took the subway. I lived in Cambridge. I took the subway into Boston, and it took about 25 minutes. Click here or in the video description to get a free cheat sheet, The Sounds of American English. It's a great reference tool, and even I use it quite a bit.
Why'd you take that job?
I took this job because it had health insurance.
What were some of your job duties for this job?
So my boss didn't do email, so my job was to read his email out loud to him and then type in his replies. I also dealt with student files and that kind of thing.
What qualified you for this job?
I had good computer skills and I'm a very organized person. I had also been an assistant to somebody before, so I kind of knew what I was getting into.
What was the process for being hired for this job?
This job was at a big university in the US, so there was a very structured process. I saw the posting online, I sent in my materials, that would be a cover letter and a resume. I had 2 rounds of interviews with HR and with the person who would be my boss, and then they gave me a formal offer.
How long were you at this job?
About 2 years.
What's the best part of this job?
The best part was definitely the health insurance. I needed that.
Why did you leave this job?
I left the job because I decided to move out of Boston.
Was the job stressful?
No, not at all.
Did you like your colleagues?
I did. There were a couple other women who worked in the office with me. It was a very small office and they were very friendly.
Have most of your jobs been as employees or contractors?
I've had way more jobs as contractors than as an employee.
What's been your favorite job?
I would have to say the job I'm doing right now.
Why did you take that job?
Well, I didn't take it. This is my own business that I developed from creating a YouTube channel, started out as a hobby, and now it's grown into my business.
Are you full-time or part-time?
I am mostly full-time at this point, but I definitely started very much so part-time because it was a hobby.
Does the job have benefits?
Yes, I do give myself and my employees benefits.
What's the best thing about this job?
The best thing about this job is it's totally my own creation, and I love that. And I get to meet and have conversations with people all over the world.
What's the worst thing about this job?
The worst thing about this job, I guess, is that it's all on me. No one is paying me a salary. It's all on me to make the financials work.
What are some of your daily tasks?
The main thing that I do right now is create YouTube videos and work with the editor and teach my students.
What qualifies you for this job?
Yeah, that's the thing that's great about YouTube is nobody had to say, you're qualified. I could just start making videos. But it's my background in opera singing that I bring to my focus on spoken English.
Who is someone who supports you in doing this job well?
I would say my husband David is incredibly supportive and he's a great person to bounce ideas off of.
Do you like your colleagues?
Tom, I love my colleagues. I have the absolute best colleagues in the world. In case anyone wasn't sure, Tom is my colleague.
If you were to switch jobs now, what are some of the factors you would consider?
Probably the main thing I would consider, of course, salary is important, but right now I enjoy so much flexibility and I have young kids, so I feel like that would be really important to me.
What was your first job?
My first job would probably have to be babysitting.
How old were you when you took that job?
My first babysitting job, I was in middle school, so probably about 12.
Did you like it?
No.
What were some of your job duties?
Obviously, keeping the kids alive, trying to keep them happy and healthy, entertained, and sometimes cooking, presenting them with a meal, feeding them if need be, cleaning up, changing diapers.
Did anything get in the way of you doing your job well?
Actually, my first babysitting job was for a little boy, and his older brother, who was in high school, was also in and out of the house, and that always distracted me and made me nervous. I don't know if it prevented me from doing the job well, but it was definitely a factor that made me feel a little uncomfortable.
Who is someone who supported you in doing that job well?
My dad, because I was 12, so I couldn't drive, so he had to pick me up and drop me off.
What was the process for being hired for this job?
This job, my first babysitting job, someone at church approached my dad and asked if I would be available, and my dad decided I would definitely absolutely do it. So I wasn't even asked.
How long were you at that job?
That first babysitting job was probably only about 6 months.
What's the strangest job you've ever had?
The strangest job I've ever had. There have been some strange ones. I think maybe I worked as a landscaper, so maybe that one.
Why was it strange?
It was strange because I only did it for 1 week.
Why'd you take that job?
I took the job because my friend, her aunt owned the company, and she was like, hey, we need a landscaper for this first week of summer. And I was like, sure, sounds fun.
What were some of the duties associated with that job?
We would go to Home Depot, buy the flowers we needed, and then go to the Burger King because we were planting beds between the road and the Burger King parking lots. And then we would plant all day.
Did you like the people you worked with?
I did, because it was just my one friend that I knew from cross country in college, and we had a lot of fun.
Was it a full-time job or part-time?
This was full-time. It was 40 hours for that 1 week.
How'd you get to work?
I think I met her somewhere with my car, and then she would be there with her aunt's pickup truck, and we'd go do the job.
Why'd you feel qualified for this job?
I didn't really. So I just did whatever people told me to do.
What was the process of being hired for this job?
Yeah, this was very unofficial. I never did any paperwork. I'm sure it was under the table and not legal, and I was paid in cash.
What was the best part of this job?
The best part of the job was playing the radio as we planted all day, just top 40 hits, and we would sing along, and it was fun.
What was the worst part of this job?
The worst part of this job was after we would plant the beds, we had to water everything, and the hose was so heavy, I had to wrestle with this thing every day.
What's the easiest job you've ever had?
The easiest job I ever had was probably in college. I lived in a small group house, and I was hired to be the house cleaner by the college, to be the house cleaner for the house.
How'd you get that job?
I think I lived with 5 people, and we all knew that one of us had to do it, and so I volunteered and I applied at the college.
What were some of the duties for this job?
Oh yeah, vacuuming, scrubbing toilets, cleaning the kitchen sink, all those good things.
Why'd you take that job?
I took it because I lived at the house, so I thought it would be an easy thing to do between studying and that kind of thing.
How long were you at this job?
This job I did for 1 year because that's how long I lived in the house.
What was the best part of this job?
The best part of the job was they paid you this set amount of money expecting that you'd be cleaning a lot, but I was in college and all of our standards were really low. So even though I kept it somewhat clean, I was not cleaning as much as they were paying me for.
What was the worst part of the job?
Cleaning toilets.
Did you have any other jobs in college?
Yes, I did. I was a tutor for math and physics.
What was the process of being hired for that job?
For the physics tutor position, I was taking a physics class, and my professor asked me if I would tutor somebody in the class who needed some extra help.
How long were you at that job?
That was 1 year.
What was the best part of that job?
The best part of that job was working one-on-one with somebody and being able to help them.
What was the worst part of that job?
The same. There was some pressure there. I felt like if she didn't do well, that it was my fault.
How did you get to work for this job?
I think we just met in the science building, so I just walked across campus.
Why did you feel qualified for this job?
I wouldn't have thought of myself as being able to do that, but my professor, when he asked me, he said, "You have one of the highest grades in class. Would you be willing to do this?" And that sort of gave me a confidence boost.
Why did you leave this job?
I left the job because we both finished the class.
Have you had any jobs that you absolutely couldn't do now?
Yes, I have been paid to sing opera on a stage before, and I absolutely could not do that now.
Why could you not do that now?
I couldn't do that now because I haven't sung a note in probably 2 decades.
What was the best part of that job?
The best part of that job was I love classical music. Just the feeling of singing, having the instrument in your body, it's very cool.
What was the worst part of that job?
The worst part of that job was probably having to audition constantly.
Why did you feel qualified for that job?
Well, I went to graduate school for opera performance, but also, they decide whether or not you're qualified. They're hearing like 100 sopranos and deciding if they like you.
What is the best paying opera singing job you ever had?
The best gig I ever had was with the Boston Lyric Opera.
What was the process of getting that job?
That one, so there was a church outside of the Boston area, and they had a soprano for a performance that got sick last minute, and I was asked to step in and do it. And the person who was running that liked my voice, and so she actually sent me to that audition because her nephew was the conductor. And so I think that connection might have helped me get that job.
Why did you leave this job?
I decided to stop pursuing opera because it just didn't really feel like me anymore. I went to graduate school for it. I love music, I love singing, but I never really saw myself as doing it for my career.
Did you like your colleagues?
I did. Opera singers are cool people.
What was your most stressful job?
My most stressful job was in graduate school. I was the personal assistant to the head of the opera department, and she was a little bit of a diva.
Why was it stressful?
She was not very nice.
What was the best part of that job?
The best part of that job was probably being able to support the other people in my program by helping the head of the program sort of run her life and run rehearsals and that kind of thing.
Did you like your colleagues?
I did. There are 2 other people who worked in the opera department as coaches, and I absolutely adored them.
What was the hiring process like for this job?
For this job, she told me that I was gonna do it, and I said okay because I was scared of her.
How long did you have this job?
I had this job for either 1 or 2 years. I actually can't remember. I think it was only 1.
What were some of your job responsibilities for this job?
For this job, I had to organize rehearsals. I also had to create and print the programs, and she also didn't do email, so I had to read her email and then type out her responses.
Did you have any other jobs in graduate school?
I did. I worked for an Italian specialty food store.
How'd you get to work for this job?
The store was located in the building next to mine, so I just walked down 4 flights of stairs and there I was.
What was the process of being hired for this job?
I think I saw a help wanted sign in the window and I called, and they were asking me where I lived, and I told them I live right next door. And I remember the woman who owns it was there, and she said, "Come down right now." So I came down. She was in the back office, and I walk in and she goes, "You gotta have 2 things to sell pasta. You gotta have looks and you gotta have personality, and I can tell you have both." So I was hired.
What was the best part of this job?
The best part of this job was at lunch. I got an hour break and I was allowed to take something, and they had really good sandwiches.
What was the worst part of this job?
The worst part of this job was they never told me, despite me asking how much I was gonna get paid, and so I didn't figure it out until after I worked there a week. I should have known better, and it was not very good.
Did you like your coworkers for this job?
I did. There was a cook who worked in the back who was very sweet, and he actually even gave me some of the recipes once.
How long did you have this job?
This job, I believe it was about a year.
Why did you leave this job?
I left the job because I was gonna go do a singing gig and I had to leave town.
Are there any other jobs you've had in the past that you couldn't do now?
Yes, I, in another life, was a computer programmer.
Why could you no longer do this?
I could not do that now because Though I studied that in college, it's been a very, very long time, and I think a lot has changed.
If you could go back in time and take a completely different path, what career would you pursue?
I've thought about this sometimes, and I've come up with actuary.
Why?
Because I love math. I also majored in math in college, and I've heard it's a not very stressful job that pays well.
If you couldn't teach online and run your YouTube channel, what would you do instead?
At this point, I honestly think what I would try to do is get a job working for YouTube.
Why?
Because I've been on the platform for 14 years. I know it, I love it. I love YouTube creators, and I think I could offer something.
What is one other job you've had that you haven't mentioned yet?
I ran a guest house and residence in Manhattan.
What was the process of getting hired for that job?
Actually, my friend had the position, and he was ready to leave, and he asked me if I would take over. And then the board agreed to it.
How long did you have that job?
I had that job for 2 years.
Why did you leave that job?
I left that job because it felt like it was time for something new, and actually, when I left that job, that's when I started working full-time on my YouTube channel.
What was the best part of that job?
The best part of that job was, it was a small group of people that lived there, and I loved them. Some of them are still my best friends. It was so fun living with people. It had a great location in Manhattan. I love New York City, and it just felt like the world was at my doorstep.
What was the worst part of that job?
The worst part of that job is easy. It was an old building. It was like 150 years old. Things were constantly going wrong with it, and it was my responsibility to deal with that.
Did you like your colleagues?
I did. I was the only person working there, but there was a board who provided oversight, and they were all really cool people.
What were some of your duties for this job?
So I ran the guest house, managed the bookings, did the laundry, met the guests, and then also the residents. I collected rent, I made sure everyone was happy, made sure everything was going well for everyone. And then the building, tried to make sure that the building didn't crumble too much.
What made you well qualified for this job?
Well, I had lived there previously as a resident, so I understood the community a little bit. I'm a friendly person, and so I think it worked well to greet people and to